Okay. I remember we were looking at, chapter 2, we saw this figure, and chapter 7, we built upon that statue. And then in chapter 8, it narrows it down to just these two kingdoms here. And then in chapter 11, it talked about these two kingdoms, but now its focus has come down to this one kingdom. And that's the kingdom of Alexander the Great and his 4 generals. And then it narrows it down to the king of the south and the king of the north. And here just a little bit, we'll be talking about a vile person that comes up in this. Here's the scriptures we were dealing with last week. And the reason I come back to this is just simply because if you're like me, you forget where we were. So these are the scriptures that we were dealing with at the close last week. It said, but his son shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude they'll be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by him. Now, just to recap, remember, Antiochus II, Theos, agreed to marry Ptolemy II's Philadelphia's daughter, Bernice. Remember that? Okay. Second thing we talked about is Antiochus II was already married to Laodicea, and he divorced Laodicea and he married Bernice in 242 BC. Soon afterwards, she conceived and had a son. Now, when Ptolemy II died, Antiochus II, Theos, he restored his other wife back to Laodicea. Remember, that is a bad idea. Bad choice. Bad idea. Because Laodicea then had Bernice and her infant son killed, and she had Antiochus II, Theos, killed. So she just killed a whole bunch. They shouldn't have ever divorced her, she said, All right. Then Laodicea had her son, who was Seleucus Callinicus, had him put on the throne in her husband's place. But now the brother of Bernice, who Laodicea killed, his name was Ptolemy III, Euergetes. He avenged his sister's death because he attacked Laodicea and her son Seleucus Callinicus, and who was ruling in Syria at that time, and he defeated them. And he didn't kill them, he just defeated them. Then the ninth thing we were looking at was the ninth point I'm making was that several years after that, after the Egyptian invasion by Bernice's brother, Seleucus Callinicus, he was able to mount a return attack on Egypt in about 240 BC. But he was defeated, and he returned to his own land, and he died in 226, which brings us to the next verses that we hadn't touched on. Any questions or comments or anything to this point? They did a lot of fighting back in those days. Things ain't changed much.
Yeah.
Right? Things hadn't changed much. Okay, for the king of the north shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former. So they say he's coming back. And shall certainly come after certain years with a great army and with much riches. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. That's Egypt. Also, the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish a vision, but they shall fall. So the king of the south shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand. So it's the king of the north come take a bunch of big cities. Neither is chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. Then it says in verse 17, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of the whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. I've noticed that word, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Okay, everybody followed that? All right. Let's see if we can get into it. He says, but his sons shall be stirred up. This is Seleucus Callinicus' sons we're talking about. His attack had failed when he attacked Egypt. Then he had a son by the name of Seleucus III, who had died in a battle in Asia Minor. And so he wasn't the one that come against the king of the south. But Antiochus III, who's known as the Great, he succeeded where his brother and his father failed in coming against the southern kingdom. Antiochus III began what became known as the Fourth Syrian War. Remember I told you last week it was just a series of wars that were known as the Syrian Wars between these two kingdoms. And we're talking about how long did it last? Over the period of 200 years. There was a battle against the north and the south. I got a question, and I don't expect you to answer, but when in studying this, have you noticed that we have a lot of scripture that deals with these two nations in these Syrian wars? You know, and it kind of makes you wonder, why is God spending a lot of time giving us this information? Yeah. Now, when it come, it was prophecy. At Daniel's time, it was prophetic. But if we look at it, it's history, you know. And I think there's a reason. We'll get into it a little bit more later. But so the king of the north shall come. This is Antiochus III, and he'll wage war against Egypt. That's what the scripture's telling us. And the king of the south will be moved with choler. He gets mad as a wet hen because of what's going on. And the king of the south, who at this time, because years have passed, is Ptolemy the fourth. Philopater, I think's the way you say it. They got some really hard names for me to pronounce. But anyway, Antiochus III, he takes Lebanon and he pushes south towards Egypt. And then the Egyptian ruler assembles a big army. And we're talking about, now we're in 213 BC. And he beats Antiochus at Raphia, that's south of Gaza. And the Egyptian army led by Ptolemy and his wife, sister, which is Arsinoe. Is that the way you would say it? that's the way they say you're supposed to say it, Arsinoe, resulted in a complete victory for Egypt. So when Antiochus goes against Ptolemy just beats it. Now, remember, these people, the Ptolemaic kingdom or dynasty, and the northern dynasty, these are all at one time kinfolks. I mean, remember, these two generals apart that ended up taking these kingdoms were both Grecian generals under Alexander. So I mean, down the line, over those years, they may distant relatives, but in a way, they're still kin. Yeah, they've been fighting all of this time. And both of the armies were about the same size during that battle, but Antiochus, he lost. Then it says in that scripture that we read, and when he had taken away the multitude, because Antiochus, he lost his whole army. And he fled into the desert, into a territory that was under his rule, but it was desert territory. And so he fled it. And Egypt ended up claiming the southern part of Syria at that time. There's another thing that to kind of keep in mind, is that all of this has to do with that one area over there. Primarily, all that one area over there. Doesn't say anything about anything eventually ever happening anywhere else. It did talk all about the history of that one area over there. Then it says, for the king of the north shall conquer. So now remember that Egypt has defeated the king of the north, and he's had to flee into the desert. But Scripture tells us it's not over yet. It said he shall return. Now, he turns his attention to the eastern part of the kingdom that was given to Seleucus, the general. But he must have been having problems then, because he campaigns against Bactria and Parthia, which is Russia or Iran now. And that's where he gets the title Antiochus the Great. We're talking about 212 to 204 BC. In 203 BC, Ptolemy IV and his wife, sister wife, now I don't know I don't know how that happened, maybe something like Abraham, but anyway, half-sister, and they did that a lot back then, But anyway, they died mysteriously. They had a son. This is Ptolemy V, and he succeeded them, but he was only 7 years old when he was put on the throne. He took power. Well, Antiochus then saw the opportunity to assemble a greater army than the army that he failed to defeat Egypt with, and he goes to go against the child king. Then it makes a statement, and the robbers of the people shall exalt themselves. That word robbers actually means the violent, the people that unrest, people that were at unrest. That's the Jews. At this time, the Jews rebelled against the Ptolemies. In fact, when Antiochus got to Jerusalem, they just threw the gates open. There was a garrison there at Jerusalem, an Egyptian garrison, quite a few soldiers. Well, when Antiochus got there, they just threw the gates open, and the Egyptian garrison was defeated. In fact, the Scopus, the Egyptian general, he was decisively defeated, and we're talking about 198 BC. Having to point out now, we're approaching the time where we're probably all familiar with it won't be long till we'll see this guy that we know a lot about, because Jesus referred to the things that he done. And we know in history that Antiochus Epiphanes, took the throne and offered a pig on the altar, set up a statue in the temple and all that. We're fast getting there, but we're not there yet. Still got a lot of these Antiochuses and Ptolemies to go through. So he now, Antiochus decides to go against Egypt. But understand at this time Rome is beginning to get kind of powerful. So he has a concern. He has a concern that Rome might intervene in the behalf of Egypt at this point. And what he does is decides to make a treaty by marrying his daughter, Cleopatra, to Ptolemy the fifth. That's what it means when he said give his daughter and in the passage of Scripture. So anyway, Antiochus had the idea that, well, if she has a son, and his grandson would be king over both kingdoms, and this is not the first time that one of the rulers thought that might be possible, but neither case has panned out yet, and this one didn't either, because where it says, but she shall not stand by his side, neither by him. Okay, what it's telling us is just exactly what happened. Cleopatra, she wouldn't help her father. She wouldn't stand with her father. Instead, she stood with the Egyptian, with her husband and the Egyptian. And so that's what it's referring to. So because of that, he turns towards the Isles. After his victory of Scopus, he turns toward the growing Roman threat in part of Greece, and he has his idea that he's going to be the next Alexander the Great and conquer Greece and all that. That didn't work out, because in these names, listen. Lucius, whatever it is, I try to get the pronunciation of these things, but Scipio, Israeticus, they defeated Antiochus III in two battles. One is at Thermopylae, which is north of Athens, and the other was at Magnesia on the Meander River. I always heard the term. They're meandering, but I never knew what a meandering was. Have you ever heard that term? Yeah. I mean, they're meandering. Well, now I know what it is. There's a river over there that meanders. So I did. But anyway, he's defeated in Greece. This paved the way later for Roman expansion in that area, because right now Rome is growing in power. And since they defeated Antiochus III, they required for him to pay tribute, and that was a 12-year period that they was supposed to pay tribute. And they took his son, Antiochus IV, as a hostage. Now, pointing out, Antiochus IV is the one that ends up being Antiochus Epiphanes. But he spent, if I remember correctly, about 14 years in Rome as a hostage. And Antiochus does. Then it says in those verses we read, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Antiochus turned back to his own land after being defeated by the Romans. Hoping to raise more money, he plundered a temple in Elam, which is Persia, which is Iran, and he was killed there. But that's what it means, will not be found. Okay, then the next guy that comes to the throne from the northern kingdom is called the raiser of taxes. So then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. What it's saying is, there's going to be a raiser of taxes that takes the throne. He stand up in his estate. Well, this guy is Seleucus the fourth. Philopater. Yeah. That's the way I think I would say it. And I think they say something like Philopater or something. I don't know. But anyway, Philopater. Anyway, he takes the throne and forced to pay tribute to Rome, which was quite a tribute, 1,000 talents. It doesn't say whether it's gold or what, but 1,000 talents. He overtaxes his kingdom. In fact, he raises taxes on the Jews really, really high, and the guy that administered the taxes on the Jews, according to 2nd Maccabees, was a guy named Heliodorus. Heliodorus plundered the temple, and that's where most of the riches was kept back in those days in Jerusalem, was in the temple, most of the treasures and everything. So he plundered that. Then it tells us in that scripture that he shall be destroyed neither in anger nor in battle. Well, Seleucus suddenly died after that, and nobody knows how. Now remember, it said neither in anger nor in battle. Some suspect that Heliodorus poisoned him, but you wouldn't poison somebody unless you was mad at him, would you? So I mean, that's it. Verse 21. And I'm trying to get through this as fast as I can, folks. But it's there for a reason. I know it's there for a reason, Okay, and in his estate shall stand up a vile person. Now we're getting close to Antiochus. In fact, we are. I've reached Antiochus Epiphanes. And in his state shall stand up a vile person to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. Up shall stand a vile person. After the battle at Antiochus III, he lost to the Roman general in Greece. Then Antiochus IV was given to Rome as a hostage, as I said before. But his brother, Seleucus the fourth, Philopater, he intervened and he was released from prison. Now this is an exchange, this is a deal here that kind of bumfuzzling. It's kind of hard to figure out. But this guy's brother, Seleucus the fourth, he intervenes and he gets Antiochus the fourth released from prison. But the way he does it is that he gives his own son, Demetrius, to be the hostage in his place. Now, that'd be hard to do. I mean, or at least for me it would. Here's how I'm going to get you out, is I'm going to give my son in your place. If, however, that's, that happened. That's what happened. And while Antiochus IV was in Athens, his brother that had gotten him out was assassinated. Well, when he was assassinated, now his son Demetrius is a hostage in Rome, so there's nobody to sit on the throne. So what happens is then Antiochus IV, who's referred to in Daniel 8 as a little horn, but anyway, it says he shall come in peaceably there. Well, what happens is Antiochus IV, he claims that he's acting in behalf of his brother's son Demetrius, who's a hostage in Rome, and the rightful heir to the throne, since his brother was assassinated. So he comes in peaceably, but he's claiming that he's just acting in behalf of Demetrius, his brother's son. But he ends up taking over the kingdom for himself. It says in that passage of scripture, with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him. So he sets about securing the kingdom for himself. He overthrew Heliodorus in Jerusalem, who again was reported to have poisoned Antiochus IV. May or may not happen. I don't know exactly, but like I said, if he did that, that would kind of indicate somebody was angry at him, and it said without anger. But anyway, he overthrows him. Also, the Prince of the Covenant. Now, if my forgetter didn't work overtime sometime, I cannot recall, but there is a calculation that starts in some of the biblical calculation that has to do, when God gives us some timetables and so forth that we work out. There is one that starts with the death of Onias, or Onias, or whatever you prefer. But anyway, and I'll think of it. I will think of it sometime. It'll come back to me. It's floating around up there somewhere. It will come back. But anyway, so Antiochus IV, he has the high priest. Now this is a legitimate high priest. This is a high priest that's of the family of Aaron, a descendant of Aaron, that should be sitting on the throne. So what he does is he has him killed. And he had a brother named Jason who was also would be a legitimate person to be high priest. He's a rival for the position, but there's another guy at Menelaus who's of the tribe of Benjamin, who's also contending for that. What happens under Antiochus IV is that the high priest position goes up for sale. Anybody could buy it. If I'd have been living there, not even a Jew, I could have bought it if I'd had the money. It just went up. Both of these guys wanted to introduce Greek culture and customs into temple worship, and that's what Antiochus IV wanted to happen. He wanted to turn the worship services in the Holy Land like the Greek religion, with Zeus and all those other. But now, Onias, he was opposed to that. Well, his death allowed Antiochus IV to move forward with establishing that great culture. And in 171 BC, Menelaus, he purchased the office of high priest, so he bought it. I put that Zeus incarnate because that's what Antiochus Epiphanes began to think of himself as Zeus. in the flesh. In fact, he erects a statue in the temple of Zeus, but it's in his, it's a picture of him. I mean, it's a statue of him, but it's called Zeus because he features himself, Zeus in the flesh. And after now there are some things that we're seeing that begin to carry over in the nature and the things that this guy does that you see carry over into the future that's going to happen. Revelation tells us that that's exactly what's going to happen. There will be an image set up, you know. There will be an image of the beast. It will speak. It will do things that would cause people to think it's got to be that the beast is the Messiah or it's God. So, well, we're beginning to see some of the things that they do. But after, the scripture said, and after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully. Now this Cleopatra's sister, that when you remember, that was married off to Ptolemy. This is not the Cleopatra that you read, that Mark Antony and Cleopatra. This is not the Cleopatra, even though that Cleopatra with Mark Antony and Julius Caesar and all that all comes not too far in the distance, but it happens a little later. This is not the same Cleopatra. In fact, Cleopatra seems to be a pretty popular name back in those days. Herod the Great had a wife that was named Cleopatra. She was Jewish, but there seemed to be a name for her. But anyway, his sister died, and that creates a power struggle in Egypt. Now remember, the only reason he didn't go in and take Egypt was because he had fear of Rome, the preceding Antiochus. So a struggle for power took place between her two sons, Ptolemy Philopator and Ptolemy Euergetes, and both wanted to control Egypt. Now they did go for a while. They both of them, they struggled for power, but both of them was working. As it ended up, both of them ended up controlling a certain part of Egypt at that time. Okay, I gotta quit. I thought maybe I might get to the good part, but it didn't happen. Anyway.